Is it okay?
Yeah, ma'am. Just a minute. I am streaming on YouTube.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, ma'am. Just yes. Now we can start, ma'am. Madhuri, ma'am, we can start.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes. I welcome all the dear participants in online course in English literature jointly organized by 3 colleges, R.S. Mundle, Dharampet Arts and Commerce College, Mahila Mahavidyalaya Nagpur and Rajkumar Kevalamani Kanya Mahavidyalaya Nagpur in collaboration with Board of Studies. Today we have among us Dr. Renuka Roy to conduct the session. I would like to introduce ma'am to you. Dr. Renuka Roy is currently working as an assistant professor of English in S.K. Porwal College, Kamptee. Madam has 14 years of teaching experience at the undergraduate level, and she has also taught PG students as a guest speaker. She was awarded her PhD in March 2017, and her topic was a critical study of women characters in the selected novels of P.S. Naipaul. Madam has published research papers in different peer-reviewed journals of great repute like Literary Criterion, The Interior, Cynical, and Rupkatha Journal, etc. She has also given oral presentations of her research work at national and international level during conferences, seminars, and webinars. She has published her papers as chapters in books published by national publisher. Her area of interest is the feminist study, diaspora literature, and Indo-Caribbean studies. Madam is a soft skill trainer too. She gives excellent presentations on interview techniques and personality development. Madam is actively involved in different cells and committees of a college and takes keen interest in developing students' language skills, especially in English. I welcome you, ma'am, and request you to conduct the session. Thank you.
Thank you, dear ma'am. Should I start?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, at the outset, let me extend a warm good morning to all the respected faculty members, colleagues, member of Board of Studies, my dear students. I take this opportunity to express my thanks to Dr. Urmila Dabir Madam, Chairman Board of Studies, RTMNU Nagpur, Dr. Tanija Nafde Madam, Principal, R.S. Mundle Dharampet College, Mahila Mahavidyalaya Nagpur, and Principal Dr. Vandana Bhagdikar Madam, Mahila Mahavidyalaya Nagpur. I am also grateful to Dr. Manjushri Deshpande, Sir Deshpande, for extending to me an invitation to deliver this lecture. And I am also thankful to the coordinators, Dr. Dudevar and Dr. Madhavi Muharil Madam, for entire support. I express my special gratitude to Dr. Kapil Singhal sir, who helped me with the study material, and Dr. Madhavi Muharil, who have constantly supported me in this work. And now I wish to start my presentation on the topic that is given to me, a poem by Samuel Daniel, The Treasure of Our Tongue. I request my technical support, kindly share the screen. Is my screen visible, sir?
Yes, ma'am. It's visible.
Okay.
Yeah, it's visible.
This poem, The Treasure of Our Tongue, is prescribed in Section 1 Poetry, a course for English literature prescribed by RTM Nagpur University, Nagpur. And I, Dr. Renuka Roy from Department of English, is at K. Srimal Porwal College, Kamptee. I'm taking this poem and I'm trying to elucidate some of the nuances containing in this poem for the students. For their convenience, for their convenience, I'll be using Hindi and Marathi from time to time in order to facilitate the understanding so that the student should get the complete idea of what this poem is all about. So before going further with the poem, let us see the background behind the poetry. Let us have some idea about the poet, the era in which this poetry was written. So I'll just go for to my further slide. Next slide. See, the poem, The Treasure of Our Tongue, is derived from, taken from this long poetry, Musophilus, containing a general defense of learning, all learning. This poem is written by Samuel Daniel, who was born in Elizabethan era. As it is there in this slide, you may see, student friends, that he was born in 1562, and an era of Elizabethan period, a Renaissance period. His contemporaries, Daniel's contemporaries, were Shakespeare, Sir Philip Sidney, Michael Drayton, etc. Like all these stalwarts, Daniel's poem Poem 2 exhibits the characteristic feature of 16th century poems or Renaissance literature. Daniel was appointed as a royal poet in the court of Herberts. He has contributed in the form of forms like classical tragedy in the manners of Seneca and the masques for the Queen. Daniel included a play introduced a play, Cleopatra, which was written in the Senecan mode. Actually, author entered the piece in the Stationer's Register. What is the Stationer's Register? It is a record book maintained by the Stationers Company in London in those days in terms of professional activities like publishing and printing, etc. As he entered, or he recorded this work, that is his play Cleopatra, as early as October 19th in 1593. And he dedicated this poem to his patron, Mary Herbert, the Countess of Pembroke, sister of Sir Philip Sidney. Daniel, he is best known for his poem, Defense of Rhyme, a treatise that promotes England's customary use of rhyme and accentual syllabic verse. Now let us see some more information about Daniel as a writer. Samuel Daniel was a courtly poet and a historian who penned narrative poems, sonnets, verse epistles, and masques. Now, student friends, as you are the students of first year, and you may not be aware with these terms, like what is a narrative poem? So narrative poems are in the form of a story. They are often written in the voice of the narrator, that is the writer himself, and the entire story is usually written in a metered verse. मतलब उसको poetry के form में कोई story बताया जाता है, especially in ballads, in epics, in idylls, narrative form is used. Sonnets are a poem of 14 lines using any of a number of formal rhyme scheme. In English, typically having 10 syllables per line. So sonnets, there are many good sonneteers, and Shakespeare is also very good. So 14 line का जो कविता होता है, उसको sonnets कहा जाता है. In the during the some other sessions, you'll learn about these poetic types in detail. Verse epistle क्या होता है? A letter in verse, usually addressed to a person close to the writer. Writer अपने ही किसी पास वाले व्यक्ति को एपिसल लिखता है, पत्र लिखता है. इसका बहुत सुंदर एग्जाम्पल है अलेक्जेंडर पोप जो है क्लासिकल पोएट, न्यू क्लासिकल पोएट का एन एपिसल टू डॉक्टर आर्बतनॉट. So essays and especially masques जो थे, they were more famous during Elizabethan period. ये a kind of courtly entertainment है, festive entertainment in the court, और छोटा छोटा event from the Bible. They were presented in front of the king and the queen, and it meant for entertaining the royalties. So हम लोग उसमें और ज़्यादा डिटेल नहीं जाएंगे. तो आपको ध्यान में आया होगा, as Samuel Daniel was a courtly poet, he has to write in order to cater to the taste of royalties. Okay, and Daniel was best known for his work Defense of Rhyme. उनकी जो poem, उनकी जो book work है Defense of Rhyme, it is in the form of a treatise that promotes England's customary use of rhyme and accentual syllabic verse. This we have already discussed, and other things also we had discussed earlier. About this poem, especially this poem, I wish to shed some light. The present extract appears in a long poem titled From Musophilus in the anthology named A Selection from Poetry of Samuel Daniel and Michael Drayton, published by J.M. Denton Company, Brentford, London. So पहली बार ये poem इस book में publish किया गया, जिसका नाम है A Selection from the Poetry of Samuel Daniel and Michael Drayton, another contemporary of Daniel that you'll be studying in this year only, in the syllabus of literature in first semester. The poem appears in the section devoted to praise English poetry. आपको ध्यान रखना है ये पूरा जो poem है, this poem especially meant to praise English poetry, the faculty of writing poetic writing verses, poetic creation. इसका पूरा जो हमारा quality है, a talent of a human being to express in the form of poems, इस एक पर्टिकुलर क्वालिटी को पूरे इस कविता में डिस्क्राइब किया है, यूलोजाइज किया है, उसकी तारीफ की है, एंड टॉक्ड हाई अबाउट इट. Musophilus takes the form of a dialogue between Philocosmus and Musophilus. अभी ये जो कविता है ये एक डायलॉग फॉर्म है. इट इज अ वर्स डायलॉग बिटवीन टू पीपल. एक है Musophilus और एक है Philocosmus. Now Musophilus, like the name itself, muse क्या है? Muse है एक what we can say an angel, a guiding force, divine force that inspires the poet to write poetry. So Musophilus is the lover of the muse, lover of the culture, lover of poetry. And Philocosmus is a love of the worldly things, दुनियादारी वाली चीजें, possession, money, power. So Philocosmus, he talks about the love of the world, and Musophilus जो है वो advocate करता है love of learning, love of culture, love of poetry. They voice the positions of public life and scholarly life. यहाँ पर जो है Musophilus and Philocosmus दोनों का डिबेट है, and Musophilus, who is the voice of poet himself, वो किस बात के बारे में बात करते हैं कि he talks about the scholarly life, life of learning, life of education, life of culture. The verse dialogue is in 6 and 8 line stanza by Samuel Daniel, dedicated to his friend Fulk Greville. उनके फ्रेंड है, उनको उन्होंने डेडिकेट किया है फल्क ग्रेविले को, and it was published in 1599. Musophilus defends the claim of culture against the worldly art practiced by Philocosmus. ये हम लोगों ने already देखा है, या आप थोड़ा सा फिर से एक बार सुन लीजिए. And who is this Philocosmus? He is the unlettered man of एक्शन. ऐसा एक व्यक्ति, ऐसा एक रिप्रेजेंटेटिव जो एक्शन ओरिएंटेड है और जो लर्निंग को या कल्चरल परस्यूट ऑफ पोएट्री को इतना इंपॉर्टेंस नहीं देता है. The poem shows at its best Daniel's gift for moral reflection in dignified and plain language and his faith in poetic vocation independent of worldly recognition. So यहाँ पर डेनियल जो है वो उनके बारे में बताया है, ये आपको जानना जरूरी है. उनका स्टाइल, हाउ ही वाज एज ए ह्यूमन बीइंग, he took poetry as some divine vocation. कविता लिखना इसको कोई बिजनेस नहीं समझते, वो समझते हैं कि इट इज गॉड्स order to us. It is already we are divinely preordained to write poetry, and he says that this vocation is extremely divine, and although he doesn't expect for worldly recognition, and even though he doesn't get worldly recognition, he doesn't get material gain out of his vocation of writing poetry, he is not at all regretful of that. before moving further, let us have an idea of what this poem, The Treasure of Tongue, is all about, central idea about this verse. So it is Samuel Daniel's signature work, Musophilus, and it is in verse format. The poem takes a passing glance at the views of Philocosmus, but promotes the thoughts of Musophilus in greater depth, since they reflect Daniel's own philosophies. मैंने पहली बार भी आपको कहा है, यहाँ पर एक dialogue है between Musophilus and Philocosmus, and he talks about Daniel talks in the voice of Musophilus. Musophilus details Daniel's views that history and culture reinforce one another in complex definition of what makes one's heritage. So, यहाँ पर एक view लिया है about the past, about our ancestry, about our civilization. In the civilization throughout, history and culture, they have gone hand in hand. We cannot divorce these two things, integral thing, from the general life of the human being. So आज जैसे the world is extremely materialistic, we says that कि आज में जियो, आप कल में नहीं देखो, बहुत बार दुनिया में बताया जाता है. So Daniel doesn't support this thought. He says that we should always know about our past, about our history, about origin of our culture, and we should be proudly retaining it through our behavior, through our writing, through our vocation. So Musophilus takes Daniel's view that history and culture, they reinforce one another. They are not complete without each other. History reinforces culture. History से हमें culture का पता चलता है, and culture is the most integral part of history. And they reinforce one another in complex definition what makes our cultural heritage. This poem is reflective and meditative in nature, that conveys the deepest philosophy behind the most serious vocation of Elizabethan era, that is poetic, expressing in the form of poetry. And we will move ahead with further explanation. See, the poet argues for the importance of cultural memories as a way of not just retrieving the past or of shaping the but of shaping the present. ये मैंने आपको पहले ही बताया कि हमें कल्चर या हिस्ट्री की तरफ इस तरह से नहीं देखना चाहिए कि हिस्ट्री या कल्चर का स्टडी सिर्फ पास्ट के बारे में बताता है, but the wisdom that we derive on studying culture and history of any country can help us shape a better future. He imagines a space containing humanist exemplar of learning and humanist supporter of real scholarship. So here he looks back in the classical era when the poets, philosophers, the dramatists, writers, they were supported and they received patronage, and he felt that even today in the Elizabethan era, poets should lead a secured and sheltered life under their patrons. Although the poet is subject to the public world and dependent on its patron, he can counter that by imagining a space in which poetry and classical humanist past shapes experience and reward. So during the Elizabethan era, these poets were writing for, or they were sheltered by the kings and royalties. Yet, poet says that although they were being patronized, they have to depend on the what we can say rewards from the patron, but he craves for a very secured place for pursuing his poetic vocation. He yearns for, wishes for those era of classical world where men of learning were respected and sheltered. Okay, now there is, let us have a little bit of argument, or we can say dialogue between Philocosmus and Musophilus. Philocosmus, the unlettered man of action and representative of love of world, wants poet, or maybe Musophilus, that to be different from your fellows, To pursue a different course is to live without the warming sustenance of a patron who provides for the material needs of the practicing poet. ये हमने पहले से देखा, मैंने आपको बताया है कि एलिजाबेथन एरा में poets जो थे, all these great poets, they were under the patronage of some big royalties. And यहाँ पर Musophilus poet को बोलता है कि you have to take care that you receive a sustaining patronage from some royalty. Musophilus defends the worth of poetry. Musophilus, although he agrees with some points mentioned by Philocosmus, but he says that poetry in itself is a very divine and very independent vocation. Poem shows Daniel's gift of moral reflection at its best, in dignified but plain language, and his faith in poetic vocation independent of worldly recognition. So, although worldly recognition is extremely important, but here Daniel dares to say that although he doesn't get that amount of worldly recognition, he is ready to pursue his poetic vocation. We will further, when we will see at the end of the poem, we will discuss about the qualities of Daniel as a human being. We will elucidate this point further, how Daniel himself hardly cared for getting hasty name and fame, and he continuously, regularly contributed in poetry in quality matter, and he gave wonderful poems to the world for which he is known even today. So this we will see by the end of the presentation. Now, without taking much of your time or testing your patience, the points that we had discussed here, that will be really helpful to you, but maybe in the form of some theoretical inputs, you will be better in a position to remember all these points. So let us now move ahead to the discussion of the poem. So Musophilus becomes the poet's own voice, and Musophilus defends the worth of poetry, but says there are too many frivolous wits writing. Musophilus बोलते हैं यहाँ पर that there are so many people who are writing with casual approach. They are not very serious about their vocation. Musophilus defends the claims of culture against the worldly art and practiced by Philocosmus. Philocosmus defends the worldly art. He is more what we can say in the sides of worldly gain and what we can say the advancement through all these materialistic things. But Musophilus defends the claim of culture, defends the claim of learning. So let us now see the poem. The poem starts like this. This poem, as I had already mentioned, this extract has been taken from Musophilus, containing a general defense of all learning. Musophilus, in which the poem defends learning as its best gift to mankind. The present extract appears in a long poem. This we had already seen, and the poem is in the form of a dialogue. Now, the entire poem is the form of a dialogue delivered by Musophilus. यहाँ पर ये जो पूरा poem है, यहाँ पर Philocosmus का view नहीं है. ये long poem में पहले जा चुका है. अभी Musophilus जो है ये defend कर रहा है English poetry को. He is defending the vocation of poetry. ये जो सारी बातें यहाँ पर बताई जाएगी, it will be all guided towards English poetry, which poet considers as not a mean of earning livelihood, but a divine vocation. Poet समझते हैं कि poetry लिखना सिर्फ एक livelihood earn करने का तरीका नहीं है, तो एक divine vocation है. So now let us read out this poem written by Daniel. Power above powers, O heavenly eloquence, that with the strong reign of commanding words dost manage, guide, master the eminence of men's affection more than all their sports. Shall we not offer to thy excellence the richest treasure that our wheat affords? So let us understand it in fragments. हम उसको छोटे-छोटे parts में समझने की कोशिश करेंगे. The first stanza, poet says that the ability to express, that is faculty of poetic expression, is the most powerful trait provided by heaven. So power above powers. Oh, heavenly eloquence. So this eloquence, the faculty to express yourself, is a heavenly quality of human being, and that with the strong reign of commanding words. So we have human being is in the possession of strong vocabulary. They are in control of strong vocabulary, which has the power to control, direct, and dominate the prominence of men's feeling more than a sword can. Okay, so आप तलवार से इतने ज्यादा लोगों को इन्फ्लुएंस नहीं कर सकते, किसी को डरा धमका कर नहीं रख सकते. That you can do with your power of writing, with your power of eloquence, with your power of articulacy. आपका faculty of poetic creation जो है, अगर आप अच्छी कविता लिखते हो या अगर आप अच्छा लेख लिखते हो, so that has more power than all these words can have. It does manage, guide, master the eminence of men's affection more than all their swords. तो ये जो power of words है, it is so powerful. Words are more powerful than a weapon to rule people. People in possession of their power of language can offer the best piece of advice to one in power through their wisdom. जिसके पास में लैंग्वेज का लिंग्विस्टिक स्किल है, जिसका लैंग्वेज बहुत अच्छा है, जो अच्छे तरीके से अपने शब्दों का प्रयोग करना जानता है, the one who knows how to make the best use of his vocabulary, his accent, the words at his disposal, he can influence people. People in possession of power of language can afford the best piece of advice to the one in power through their wisdom. अपने wisdom से वो बहुत अच्छा advice दे सकते हैं. Shall we not offer to thy excellence the richest treasure that our wheat affords? So here is a question put by the poet himself. ये एक question है, a very profound, very poignant question put up by poet himself. Poet at the end of this stanza asks, should we not strive to the best of our abilities to give richest outputs that our brain can afford to bring forth the service of the poetic art? So our brain can give wonderful things. It can put forth, it can generate beautiful literature. So shall we not strive for that? उसे हमें कोशिश नहीं करना चाहिए क्या कि हमारी कोशिशों से best possible thing जो है वो हम लोग पेपर में उतार सके. The poet at the end, he says that we should strive at our best. We should do our best to give the most wonderful output in the form of poetry. Now, the next stanzas are, I hope this first stanza is well explained by me, and now we will move ahead with this second stanza. In the second stanza, the poet writes, thou that canst do much more with one poor pain than all the powers of princes can effect, and draw, divert, dispose, and fashion men, better than force or rigor can direct. Should we this ornament of glory then, as the unmaterial fruit of shades neglect? He continues the second stanza in the similar line or in the similar mood, or same kind of theme is continued in the second stanza also. Thou that canst do much more with one poor pain than all the powers of princes can effect. So he says in the next stanza, poet agrees that the person in possession of knowledge may not have wealth and possessions. He may not be very wealthy, but still the knowledge that one possesses is more powerful than all the authority that a king can display. तो जो व्यक्ति है जिसके पास में knowledge है, he may not be very wealthy, he may not be very what we can say, he may not having material possessions as such, but his position, that is his knowledge, is much more powerful than the authority of displayed by a king. So thou canst do much more with one poor pen. So that pen may look poor, but it has great power, and the power is even more influential than the power of the princess. This is what poet feels. And draw, divert, dispose, and fashion men better than force or rigor can direct. So what can this pen do? Aapka, your faculty of writing, your faculty of creating poetry, or your faculty of poetic, generating beautiful poems, what can they do? The person with this power of knowledge, with their learning, with their cultural understanding, can induce, can persuade, deter, marshal, sometimes fight too, and shape people in a better way, that is fashion them. They can draw, divert, dispose, and sometimes fashion, shape them in better person. We have seen that we send the small kids to school so that by learning this beautiful things, by learning the poems, by learning the what we say text, by understanding all those things, they can develop their character into a better human being for their brighter future. So what can this learning do? They can draw, divert, dispose, and fashion men better than force or rigor can direct. You cannot direct a person forcefully. You cannot use your muscle power and influence a person so well as you can with the use of your words. आप अपने शब्दों का प्रयोग करके जितना अच्छे तरीके से ये काम कर सकते हो, that you cannot do with your poetic words, that you cannot do by using force, your muscle power. Should we, once again there is a question then, should we this ornament of glory then as the unmaterial fruits of shades neglect? Okay, तो यहाँ पर फिर से पोएट ने एक सुंदर क्वेश्चन किया है. पोएट कहते हैं, so can we neglect this power of eloquence? ये जो हमारे पास पोएटिक एक्सप्रेशन का और गिफ्ट ऑफ आर्टिकुलेसी जो हमारे पास है, इतना सुंदर लिखने की हमारी जो खुद की प्रतिभा है, this art of ours, this talent of ours, should we let it get rusted? Should we neglect it? Should we keep it like that only? So can we then neglect this power of eloquence, poetic expression, this articulacy as the unmaterial fruit of shades? This expression is highly suggestive here. That is, some people may consider poetry as mere abstraction, some abstract notion, some unmaterial fruit of shade, that they may neglect it as useless thing, they may term it as an outcome of darkness. Although this faculty of human brain, that poetic generation, is actually an enhancement of something very magnificent. Poet strongly feels and he believes that this faculty of human brain is divine providence. God has not given this gift of eloquence to everyone. He has bestowed this faculty to only chosen few. बहुत कम लोगों को ये beautiful gift उन्होंने दिया है of writing beautiful poems. Poetry लिखने का जो quality है, बहुत कम लोगों को ये divine जो gift है, it is received. So poet here pleads those people who have this beautiful faculty that they should not let this ornament of glory be neglected and consider it as only abstraction and material fruit of shade, and they should not let it neglect. So this is a beautiful line, and now we will move ahead with the further development of the poem. Here poet says that should we careless come behind the rest in power of words that go before in worth. when as our accent equal to the best is able greater wonders to bring forth, when all that ever hotter spirits expressed come bettered by the patience of the north. So here poet expresses his what we can say, his pride of his language. As a proud Britisher, as a proud Englishman, he is here expressing his pride for English tongue. He says this language is very powerful and we must acknowledge the worth of our English tongue. हमें देखिए 16th century में the poet is professing, वो बता रहे हैं कि how this English language is so powerful, and he prophesizes, he foretells how this language in near future going to rule the world. Upcoming lines जो है, coming stanzas जो है, they are highly motivating and they are highly, what we can say, attractive as well as enigmatic. Enigmatic मतलब हमको puzzle कर देता है कि ये visionary in 16th century in the Elizabethan era, how he can visualize such future that English will be lingua franca of the entire universe, entire world. So he says, यहाँ पर वो एक plead कर रहा है to Englishmen, those who have the quality of writing well. He is pleading them that should we careless come behind the rest in the power of words that go before in worth. So he says, in general appreciation of knowledge over the material power, the poet gets particular in the third stanza. So now he gets very particular. He comes to the point and praises his language as great and powerfully laced with the best characteristic of communication. He says English language is very great and it has wonderful vocabulary, wonderful power of words that can be used forcibly for communication. He says that Englishmen are fortunate to have a treasure of such a wonderful language. He says, हमारे जो Englishmen हैं, they should acknowledge that they have this treasure of language and they should be careful that and take advantage of it instead of allowing the other nations to overtake them in the matter of language. He says that English people should be careful that this beautiful language is well utilized by them, well advocated by them. They should exhort this language in the global platform, and so that lest other country take the advantage of this language and they can flourish. Before that, Englishmen should use it to the best possible capabilities. Okay, English language has the best accent, though with greater marvel can be through which greater marvel can be achieved. So English is a very beautiful language with best accent, जिससे हम और अच्छा कर सकते हैं. When as our accent equal to the best is able greater wonders to bring forth. So with this beautiful language, with the beautiful accent, we can bring forth greater wonders when all that ever hotter spirits expressed comes bettered by the patience of the north. So he says, English tongue can express the fresh ideas in a better way than any other language. The line, the patience of the north, is highly significant in the poem. इस कविता में ये जो line है, patience of the north is very significant. North represents wisdom in the poem. Celts, जो एक tribe है, regarded north as a symbol of wisdom, and historians they believe that Celts use North Star for guiding during the travel. So in this particular stanza, poets talks with great pride, element of pride about his language. He is confident that this language can be a wonderful instrument of communication in near future. And he cautions his own fellow men that they should not let it neglect, so lest it will be exploited by men from other country. They will make the best use of language before we Englishmen could bring out the best out of it. And he implores, he requests Englishmen that they should make best use of English words, vocabulary, accent, and bring forth beautiful literary creations and express themselves wonderfully in English language. Okay, now we will now move ahead. these are the next stanza is very famous one, and they are oft quoted stanzas of Samuel Daniel, when Daniel himself says, "And who in time knows whither we may wend? The treasure of our tongue, to what strange shores this gain of our best glory shall be sent. It enrich unknowing nation with our stores, that worlds in the yet unformed Occident may come refined with the accent that are ours." Okay, तो हम फिर से थोड़ा सा एलिजाबेथन एरा के बारे में बात करते हैं. Elizabethan era was an era of adventures when mariners and sea voyagers from England, they went and discovered new world. Like Christopher Columbus, he went to America. Vasco da Gama, he came to India, and they discovered new world. And we know that in coming centuries, English became the language of the entire world. Okay, so when Englishmen, they went from one place to another, along with other things, they carried the cultural nuances, including their way of thinking, their customs, their costumes, their language too. So English spread all over the world. This he had already foreseen, might be Samuel Daniel had already foreseen in the last phase of 16th century, and he has wonderfully put this forth. And thus these lines became the most quoted lines whenever there is a discussion over English being the universal tongue. Okay, now see, ये कुछ slides में आप लोगों को दिखा रही हूँ. Why English the cultural foundation? English is considered as cultural foundation, and these lines of Samuel Daniel are quoted. So इसका conclusion यही निकलता है that I had already discussed, that English started in Britain, and the spread began with the first mass exodus. What is exodus? Exodus is crossing the ocean. इंग्लैंड से निकलकर जो वॉयजर्स है, सी वॉयजर्स है या मेरिनर्स है, द एक्सप्लोरर्स, दे वेंट टू अमेरिका, सम वेंट टू अमेरिका, सम वेंट टू एशियन कंटिनेंट, एंड दे आफ्टर द मास एक्सोडस फ्रॉम स्मॉल कंट्री टू अनदर कंटिनेंट, from England to other continents they went, where this language was enriched by all new things found there. So English was spread there, and the vocabularies from other languages, some cultural elements from other languages, they were added to English, and it enriched English further. In the last year of 16th century, Samuel Daniel has speculated that who in time knows whither means where we may went, and the treasure of our tongue to what strange shores. So these strange shores are maybe United States of America, or maybe the Asian countries like India. Okay, so these are very beautiful lines. So I wish that students should understand the beauty behind this beautiful stanza. In the fourth stanza, he foresees the ability of his language to provide knowledge to the other parts of the world that he considered to be undiscovered and underdeveloped. Okay, so here is a pride of an Englishman who considers himself as a custodian of cultural, what we can say, cultural foundation, or cultural man responsible behind spreading the English culture all over the world. So he considered other world like America and Asian countries as undeveloped, undiscovered world. In future, his treasure of language that his fellow brings possess may be shared with the lands that they have not visited. So the see beauty. I'll once again read out from the poem. Who in time knows whither we may went, the treasure of our tongue to what strange shores. Here the strange shores refer to these countries like Asia or the continent of America. This gain of our best glory shall be sent to enrich the unknowing nations with our stores. So the stores of words stores of accent, our beauty of language, this glory of language, that his language will help the other nation to gain the knowledge. English became the language of libraries. English became the language of knowledge. And the poet's country is in having because of their language. So other nation will get benefited by the language that originated in England, that what he foresees, the new world of Occident that is still unformed. The word Occident, O-C-C-I-D-E-N-T, Occident here refers to the United States, which was in those days in the unformed condition. It was still underdeveloped. It was still unexplored. And these unformed, undeveloped continent will receive grace and beauty, and what we can say, they will flourish with the use of English tongue. The new world of Occident that is still unformed will achieve gracious existence with the accent that poet's mother tongue has. So poet's mother tongue can bestow grace to the countries like United States and Asian countries, and they will be benefited. This is what poet means here. So he highly eulogizes English tongue, and he foresees or he forecasts the what we can say, prospects of English as a global language in time to come. Now let us move further. Or who can tell what great work in hand, the greatness of a style is now ordained? What powers it shall bring in, what spirits command, what thoughts laid out, what humors keep restrained, what mischief it may powerfully withstand, and what fair ends may thereby be attained. So in the last stanza, poet established complete supremacy of his language by giving it a status of language that belongs to God. Now he says that my language is not ordinary. It is a divine providence. It is a divine, what we can say, blessing that we have received as Englishmen. And he says this is the language of God, blessing of God. He asks if anyone can guess the great achievement that awaits this world and is possible because of the great style of his language. So there is a significance of this word ordained. Ordained here means divine providence, God's will. He says greatness of a style, because of beauty and grace of my language, maybe some great work will be achieved, some great achievements are awaiting, and it will only materialize due to beauty of English tongue. He asks if anyone can guess the great achievement that awaits this world is possible because of great style of language. People who will learn this language shall acquire power to control the souls of other. The person who will be the master of this language, what power it shall bring in, what spirits command. So the person who will be well versed in my language, that is English, will have that power to command other spirit, other soul. They will be well loved and well received by people all over the world. What thoughts lay it out, what humors keep restrained. So the person with the command of English language, command of beautiful expressions in English, the people who will learn this language shall have acquire power to control the souls of other. It will help in expressing new thoughts and in keeping check the absurdity. Here the humor is not only comic. Here humor has a very broader sense. Here he signifies, like we will be studying theory of humor, in which Ben Jonson, he has referred to different kinds of moods, and humor represents such moods. So poetry or use of language can keep these humors in restraint. So they will have sublimatic effect. They will have use of English language can bring out sublime effect to the humor. यानी कोई भी absurdity है, कोई भी emotions है, कोई भी mood है, वो जो है वो ज़्यादा excess नहीं होगा. It will be brought into restraint by the correct use of English tongue. इंग्लिश का सही उपयोग होगा फ्यूचर में, और इनका इस वर्क से सारी भावनाओं को सही तरीके से व्यक्त किए जाएंगे. ओके, इट विल हेल्प इन एक्सप्रेशन ऑफ न्यू थॉट्स एंड इन कीपिंग check on absurdity. This language will be able to resist nuances and thus bring justice to all. The mischief it may powerfully withstand. कोई लोगों के ideas होंगे, some notions, some false ideas people may be harboring. Like here, there is a reference, you know, as a student of literature, you must know that Daniel was a great patriot and lover of English language and England. So he always, what we can say, opposed the idea that the languages, the classical languages like Latin and Greek, they were very super and they only shaped English. He says that English in itself is is very powerful language, and it has great command and it has the power to influence people. So he says that mischief, if someone may say that there are some other language who hold more, that hold more power and that held more power. So he very systematically, what we can say, subsides, or he puts aside all such doubts, and he says that if there are any such mischief in the minds of people, this English tongue has got the power to withstand all such criticism. And what fair ends may thereby be attained, and by using this English tongue, English language, we may attain very good results. We may achieve great benefits in future. This is what Daniel says. Now we had already seen this. Now let us see in brief what kind of human being was Daniel to bring out such a wonderful poetry and to give us such a beautiful reflection on English language and English poetry in particular. So Daniel was an extremely intelligent and thoughtful poet, and he was gifted with the imagination and literary eloquence. His art of writing was wonderful. He was one of those gems of Elizabethan era, and he was nowhere inferior to the writers like Spenser, Sidney, Shakespeare, and Lilly, or Drayton, all his contemporaries. So he was nowhere less than all his contemporaries, and he was dedicated to the craft of writing poetry, and he labored to write and then to polish his verse. So he was very, very meticulous, and he used to take time to write his poem, and he used to polish them further and to bring out the best in the form of verse. He had all the virtues of best practitioners of his art, the patience to correct and revise, and sensitivity to criticism. He was very sensitive to criticism positively and would take it as a guidance that will reform his art further. वो क्रिटिसिज्म को बहुत ही सेंसिटिवली लेते थे, और वो हमेशा मानते थे कि ये क्रिटिसिज्म जो है, it can guide him further to create better poetry. Daniel would strive to improve the verbal melodies of his lines and repair what he thought were technical blemishes. अगर वो समझते थे कि उनका राइटिंग में कुछ टेक्निकल डिफिकल्टी आता है, कुछ छूट गया है, so he was very careful of correcting them, and he would purge the Elizabethan idioms from his language and seek conciseness in his expression. Conciseness मतलब exactly जो बोलना चाहते हो वैसा. So there was no provision of revision after Samuel Daniel wrote it. तो जैसे उन्होंने जो लिख दिया है, it becomes the eternal. वो जो है वो एकदम ही universal हो जाता था. तो he was so polished, and he was so meticulous about his art. Modern editor of Daniel's poetry has referred to the writer as something of a neoclassicist born before his time. So neoclassicists were known for perfection of their art. Neoclassicist को जाना जाता था उनके art के प्रति, उनके कला के प्रति. They were very perfectionist, and Daniel was also the same. He was very slow in publishing and bringing forth his work in the public forum. Why? Because very conscious of his art. वो चाहते थे कि कोई गलती ना रहे. So particularly in reference to his passion for accuracy, he was very passionate about the accuracy, and that's why he was very slow in making his things public. So he was. This one is not a criticism; it is a praise of Samuel Daniel, that sometimes he was considered as a neoclassicist born before his time. So style of Daniel, to the general reader, Daniel, if he is known at all, he is known by his sonnets. तो sonnets जो है उनका सबसे main forte रहा है. He used to write beautiful sonnets in good language and correct meter. His sonnets were very well received by the Elizabethans, and they preserved it further, and we still enjoy a wonderful collection of Daniel. And Daniel's tendency was to meditation. He was very reflective. His writing was full of philosophy. He was an original and subtle thinker. So that is why his thinking or his writing became so universal. And he would exercise himself on great matters. So on some, not on a petty thing, he would think. He would take some very, what we can say, elevated matters he used to think about and write on those lines. Okay, Coleridge was once in conversation with Wordsworth. So Coleridge is a romantic poet. He came much later. And he's a great critic. आप लोग एज अ स्टूडेंट ऑफ लिटरेचर आगे जाकर जब आप रोमांटिक एरा पढ़ोगे तब आप कोलरिज को पढ़ोगे, जब आप क्रिटिसिज्म पढ़ोगे फर्दर एमए में तब आप कोलरिज को पढ़ोगे. तो एक बहुत ही अच्छे क्रिटिक है कोलरिज, जो डैनियल के बारे में क्रिटिसिज्म करते हैं, उनको प्रेज करते हैं फॉर हिज नेचुरल यूज ऑफ लैंग्वेज. Now, in final analysis, I may say that Daniel must be seen as a poet of Renaissance, whose imagination grew out of Renaissance ideals of action. So, वो जो Renaissance के poet जो है, they उनका ideal of action क्या था? To pursue learning. And to reconcile the ideal of action with that of culture. So they always thought that action as well as culture goes hand in hand. So we should always be careful about how we are influencing the culture of present and how it will be looked in the future. Such poetry, particularly in Musophilus, becomes the prophecy in which Daniel looked to a new world that will continue to prophesize that civilization future. So ये जो Musophilus की poem है, it talks about, or it prophesizes, it foretells about the tendency of people in the civilizations to come. Future में हम लोग किस तरह से language का use करेंगे, that Daniel very beautifully expresses here. In that world, the poet rises to a considerable height when he explicates the fine qualities of former age and wishes for the brighter future. So in this present poetry itself, if you just notice, first 2 or 3 what we can say stanzas, Daniel talks about the fine qualities of future of past classical language, our culture, importance of retaining good language, and what maintaining quality in our art, and the coming third, fourth, and fifth stanza, he wishes about the brighter future of the language, and he prophesies it. Like his contemporaries, Shakespeare and Spenser, Daniel represented true Elizabethan poet. Because as did all true Elizabethan, he tried very hard to transcend the boundaries of his age. So Daniel was not only limited to his era, his age, but he has thought about the past. He has thought about the cultural legacy in the form of language. Language के form में हमें किस तरह का cultural legacy मिला है, that he thought about, and further he thought about how this language may develop further in future, and how it can achieve greater grace and achievement. Okay, so this is how I tried to bring forth this beautiful poem within this presentation, although it is very difficult task. The poem is highly philosophical, highly reflexive, and it is extremely difficult to what we can say, to collate all these beautiful, fine, and highly elevated ideas into a single presentation. But still, I tried my level best. And I wish to end my presentation here with the best wishes to all our students of literature with these beautiful words by Samuel Daniel himself, that you are the stars, you are our future, and the stars that have most glory. The students of literature are considered to be the finest and the most intellectual in their stream. So they are like stars with most glories. They have no rest. So you did not rest now. You have to move ahead, take up new challenges, and do your best in your field. And with this word, I thank the organizer, especially 3 colleges, Mahila Mahavidyalaya and R.S. Mundle Dharampet College and Rajkumar Keval Ramani College, for giving this opportunity to me. And I'm stopping my, I request my technical support to stop sharing.
So much, madam. As a very good teacher, you have interpreted the poem in a very easy way. Thank you so much. You have covered all the important aspects of this poem. Thank you so much. On behalf of all the 3 colleges, I would like to express my humble thankfulness to you. It is to the students. You will have to fill up the feedback form, which will be uploaded in the chat box later on. Tomorrow we will meet again with the next session with the new resource person. Thank you so much.
Thank you, madam.